How would you like custom LED strips to be able to be controlled by your IQ4 panel in Alarm.com? I know I would. This is Darren with SaveThePanel, and today we have a little something different, a Zooz ZEN56 RGBW dimmer on the IQ4 panel in Alarm.com. Will it actually work? Will it be controllable? We will figure that out here in the next few minutes. So, how in the world did we get here? Well, on the Surety forum, someone asked me a long time ago, it was back in March, and I took my old sweet time doing this, but asked, hey, does anybody know if this will work? Can we use a ZEN56 on an IQ4? And I said, that's a good question, and I actually bought one for the lab, and I haven't done the video yet, but I will. So I apologize for the delay, but I'm finally getting around to testing this on the IQ4. The ZEN56 is a long-range Z-Wave RGBW dimmer intended for use with 12 to 24 volt LED strips. Since it's RGBW, it has white, blue, green, red outputs, a switch 1 and switch 2 input, and operates on 12 to 24 volt DC. It is not for line voltage. It has a number of configurable parameters as well, and some built-in light shows and other really neat features and dimming effects. Now, all of these features, of course, are available in most full-blooded ecosystems like Home Assistant, the Z-Box, and so forth. But in this case, we're going to focus on the IQ4 panel and see if it really is usable in that environment. Here we have the parameters for the ZEN56, and like most Zooz relay and dimmer products, has some of the standard parameters that are configurable: on-off status after power failure, the switch types, scene control. It is kind of nice that there are two switch inputs here, and they can be used differently, one for scene control, one for dimming and white level control of the strip and so forth, which is very neat. Crossfade transition is configurable. The ramp rate on and off, also for Z-Wave ramp rate, on-off timers, timer unit, all that good stuff. But what I thought was very neat here, especially we're going to test this in a minute on the IQ4, is you can set a parameter to choose whether or not to display the channel endpoints. In other words, is this just going to be the RGB dimmer itself sent to the Z-Wave controller, or are each of the individual channels, red, green, blue, and white, going to be expressed individually as endpoints on the Z-Wave controller? We're going to try it both ways and see what that gives us. And sometimes when you turn things like this on, those endpoints may or may not appear on the IQ4 when it's added, so we'll see if that even works. The other neat thing is color animation presets: fireplace, storm, rainbow, polar lights, and so forth, which we'll give that a test as well, but it looks like it's only configurable via this parameter, which doesn't hold that much hope, since the IQ4, there's no way to programmatically, in terms of a scene or an automation, to push a parameter. Unfortunately, it can only be done manually, so that may not be too exciting, but we'll take a look anyway. And then other things like scene multi-tap, LED indicator, inclusion from switch, and the likes. But yeah, we're definitely going to be paying special attention to parameters 16 and 17 here in just a minute. So for this test on the bench, I have a LED power supply, BTF lighting LED strip, specifically a 50/50 RGBW 4-in-1 LED strip, and a couple of other parts and pieces. But since this is just for testing, we're going to put this together quickly and temporarily. I decided to just use some Wagos to make this relatively easy to wire up and get going. So basically, the wiring diagram that comes with the instructions on the Zen56 is relatively straightforward. The WBGR leads go directly to the corresponding leads on the strip. The black lead on the strip goes to the positive DC voltage, which gets bridged into the Zen56 as well. And the switch circuit, being the S1 or S2, is a connection from the DC negative or ground to the S1 or S2 terminal to trigger the switch. And again, it's 12 volt DC in this case, not 120 volts. And here I realized, oh, I really need a switch wired into SW1, so I'm wiring one in so we can test that momentary button style, also make it easier to include and exclude on the bench. And here you see, this is sped up of course, but here you see dimming works with one button as well as off and on. Okay, so now we're ready to add this to the IQ4. So the first thing, I just turn it off and on and prove that it's got power and it's responding, and just joined it to the IQ4 panel. Sped this up. We've done this millions of times, I'm sure. It was very uneventful, and I just called it RGB strip. Now that it's loaded, I went in and looked for typical errors, like here in the system status. Sometimes you'll get an unsupported device. We don't have anything like that, which is good. And in the lighting control panel, we do see it here. And it does look like a dimmer switch. And what I found when playing with this for a while, at first I thought it was not responsive, but I realized the ramp rate was set pretty slow, so I needed to be a little more patient. But it did indeed respond to on, off, and brightness settings. It just it took a minute for the interview to complete, and I was just a little impatient. So next up, I figured let's try to push a parameter to this, specifically something interesting, like maybe that parameter 17, which will control the LED strip light show. So it took a second here to find where that is. And I decided to go with option 5, police strobing red, white, blue. Why not? Let's see what happens here as I set that parameter. Oh, and there it is. Woo! It was like a discotheque. I loved it. But it certainly did work. It's just unfortunate that we're not going to be able to programmatically push that at any time, but very cool to see that it did respond. I then tried using the switch to see if I toggled the switch, would the the police effect turn on and off, and it did not, unfortunately. So I tried a couple of other options there for parameter 17, and they seem to work fine, but again, only are triggered by the actual pushing of the parameter, unfortunately. So let's see how this looks in alarm.com, and very interesting, you can see here that it realizes it's an RGB style bulb. You see that other little circle there in the upper right, and it did have a number of colors available and even some scene palettes. And I played with this for quite a while, and it seemed like solid colors really were fairly good, and the palettes were also fairly good, but everything seemed washed out. And after working with it for a while, I think what was happening is that alarm.com was commanding the RGB values correctly, but I think it was always commanding W to be on as well, probably too much W, too much white, making some of the colors look a little washed out and not as vibrant as I think they really should have been. Keep in mind, my camera doesn't really do justice to the colors there in the corner, but you get the idea. So then I decided to take things a step further. Could we create scenes and really make use of this? Really cool things like, when you're arming the alarm, can you have it be a color? Disarming the alarm, have it be another color? and so forth. So I tried this a few ways. One was to create scenes and call scenes. The other was to directly command the light. And it did indeed work. You can see there that it turned red when I ran that red scene, again with too much W. It's a little washed out of a red, but it is indeed a red. So I suppose if you're okay with those colors, this could be usable wherever you could launch a scene or even command it to come on to a certain color at a certain brightness setting or off on, right? Depending on the automation rule. As we all know with Alarm.com, some automation rules require a scene, some require an actual light endpoint, so your mileage may vary there. So in general, I suppose it's usable with those caveats. So what about that parameter 16? What if we change that value and we display all of the channel endpoints for red, green, blue, and white? Would that solve our problem with the washed out colors? So I thought let's go ahead and give that a shot. So the first thing we have to do is set that parameter, and once the parameter is set in the device, you have to exclude and re-include the device for those endpoints to show up. Now, I know what you're thinking. Devices that have this feature with the IQ4 usually never have those other endpoints show up after setting the parameter. We shall see here, though, in a second what happens. And spoiler alert, it's exciting. Look at that. There it is. So we have the endpoints. And here I'm taking a total guess that, which endpoint would be which. I started with red, I believe, and just kind of went through the order I thought they would be, and I turned out to be correct. So it was pretty lucky. So now that's included, we can see that each of the colors are represented as an endpoint. They look like independent dimmer switches, and sure enough, if I turn on the white, I get white. Again, just have to wait a minute for that ramp speed and all the Z-Wave goodness to happen. But here we go. There's blue, and we light up blue. So we do have independent control over those colors, which means to me, at least, that you could custom mix these colors as you like. But can you really do that in Alarm.com and the IQ4? Let's take a look. So here we are in Alarm.com, and we can see, oh, here's our endpoints we called, red, green, blue, and white. And they do work. And you can tell that red is way more vibrant than the red before because it doesn't have the white pixel or white LED portion firing at the same time. So you get a nice rich red. And if I turn on red and blue, I get a very pretty purple. So this definitely seems better from a raw control standpoint, for sure. So what about looking at automation? So it does show up as a remote, so the buttons on the device do come up as a remote that you could configure, which I'm sure will come in handy, at least in some way. But really, I'm still focused on, can we trigger things with an automation rule? So let's try to do something when the panel is armed or disarmed. We're going to do arm stay, and we want to command the device. So here's the challenge, right? Because to make a color, you'd need a mixture of these colors at the same time, but a scene only allows you to do one action. So it's difficult to have, say, blue at one intensity and red at a different intensity in a rule like that. But if you're doing something simple, like when in your arm stay, it will be blue, that seems very doable. So then I created one for disarming, where in this case we are going to make it green when the system is disarmed. And here's where I'm realizing it's really difficult to mix the colors. So what if we try to make it purple, red and green together at 50%? Let's give that a shot. So let's go ahead and arm stay and see what happens. And there we go, we get our blue. So that's pretty reassuring. So let's go ahead and disarm, and do we get purple? And unfortunately that did not work. So I decided to go a different direction. Let's try a scene. And what's interesting about a scene is I think this may allow us to overcome our color mixture issue. So here we can set red and blue with different intensities if we wanted to, which would make the hue of color that we're really looking for. I also made a couple of other scenes for additional colors like green and blue as well to see if we could map these to the actions that we wanted. So with those scenes created, then we can go into automation rules and change those to use our newly created scenes and see how this works when we arm and disarm the panel. And here's our disarm rule. We'll change that to be purple and save. So now if we arm, then those lights should turn blue, but oops, they were already blue, so we're not seeing a color change. Let's go ahead and disarm and see if they turn purple. And they did. It's hard to tell in the camera view there, but they certainly did. So let's arm it again and see if they turn from the purple back to blue. And again, hard to see, but that is indeed blue at this point. So I think we're good. We'll let that turn back to purple one more time, and there it goes. So I think that did the trick. And if you notice, as I built these scenes, and I'll make another one here for red, I'm careful to turn off the colors we're not using and turn on the colors we are in the scene. Otherwise, what will happen is if you don't address the turn off of a given color, you'll wind up with a color combination that you did not expect. And now I decided to try to map a sensor action like a door opening or motion being detected to one of our newly created scenes. But unfortunately in alarm.com, a sensor action can only affect a light switch, not a scene. So in that case, that's where this particular configuration using the independent endpoints kind of falls apart, since alarm.com requires you to use the light switch, which, as we said a minute ago, is difficult to blend your desired colors with that method. You know, I certainly wish that alarm.com was a little more flexible, allowed you to use scenes or light switches anywhere you wanted to for a variety of rules. I understand some of the logic why they've restricted their ecosystem a little bit for that, but you know, it would be so much more flexible if they took some of those guardrails off. All right, so how did the Zen56 RGB dimmer on the iQ4 and alarm.com really wind up? Well, there's two ways to use it. One is with parameter 16 in its default state, where it's a single multicolor control device, and the other is with parameter 16 set to 0, allowing for individual RGBW endpoints. All in all, you know, they're both successful on their inclusion. Z-Wave control gives you on, off, and dim only on the iQ4 panel itself. Of course, if you're expressing all the endpoints, you get that for each individual endpoint on the panel. Inside alarm.com, things are a little different. On the single multicolor control device, you really get your color palette. You get themes, dim, on, off, remote scene control from the switch input leads on the relay does function. The colors do seem washed out, looking like there's too much white, but I did find a workaround, and here's the workaround. I disconnected the white pin. So if I disconnect the white going to that particular RGB strip that I'm using, And now it's again hard to tell in this video, but that's set to red, and trust me, that's way more of a vibrant red than it was before. And of course, if I disarm, I have it set to just turn the LED strip off completely, and you see it works fine. So I believe that that's a great workaround for this particular light strip. Of course, your light strip that you use may be completely different. This was, again, a 50/50 RGBW. However, certainly if you have the individual endpoints expressed, you get very specific ability to tune in the colors manually if you'd like, but that makes lighting control a little difficult because of the way scenes and lighting control are built within Alarm.com. Automations, with a single endpoint work in the classic Alarm.com sense, whether it's configurable as a switch or a scene. But with individual endpoints, you really wind up with some complicated scenes, but you do get vivid color with that white pin still connected. However, if you're using this on a single color LED strip, like a one color of white under a kitchen cabinet, this device is perfectly usable with IQ4 and Alarm.com in that scenario. So thank you for joining me today on this little bench test. I think all in all, the Zen56 is perfectly usable in the IQ4 and Alarm.com. If you happen to have the 50/50 RGBW strip, disconnect the white wire if you want vivid color. Otherwise, maybe try a different RGB strip. Maybe I was just unlucky. Well, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. I really do appreciate you spending time at the bench with me today. If you found it useful, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed yet, now's a great time. There's a lot more testing and integrating on the way. I also want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on what we covered today, or let me know what you'd like to see me tackle next. Whether it's a device, an integration, or just something you've been banging your head against, throw it in the comments or bring it over to the forum at SaveThePanel.com. Until next time, I'll see you online.